Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith to Lead. I'm delighted that you're here today. And today we have a special guest for you. We have an interview for you, someone that's coming to you straight from Regent University and is a storied individual in her own right. Her name is Dr. Kathleen Patterson, and she's currently directs a Doctor of Strategic Leadership program. And she's been at Regent University since 1999 for over 25 years. And she's been with different schools and different departments, but she champions a doctoral program. She's a noted expert on servant leadership. Dr. Patterson also coordinates an annual servant leadership research roundtable in Virginia Beach. And she scholars and practices and meets with people to engage in all different kinds of servant leadership discourse. She's also coordinated on the West Coast, a West Coast servant leadership roundtable in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the American Society of Business and Behavioral Sciences Conference. Dr. Patterson is also a leadership practices inventory certified individual, which is based on the Leadership Challenge by Kouzes and Posner. And that's something that we look at here. We love all of their transcendiary work. So she's involved in numerous consulting projects locally, nationally, and abroad. She's involved in various professional associations like the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, the International Association of Leadership Consultants, and the International Leadership Associates and International Leadership Association. In other words, we have a leadership expert. She's a PhD from Regent University, and she has written over 72 publications and counting. So she's well documented, has written a lot. She's a wonderful person, and she loves the Lord. So when I thought about someone who we should bring to you today so that you can learn leadership insight from someone else, here's some new thoughts. I couldn't think of anyone other than Dr. Kathleen Patterson. So I want you to share this podcast, subscribe to Faith to Lead, or visit us at faithtolead.com. Whatever you do, don't leave. Don't miss a beat, because you're going to hear from Dr. Kathleen Patterson. So Dr. Kathleen, I want to say welcome to you. Welcome to Faith to Lead, and it's a delight to have you.
It's a delight to be here, Dr. Fenton. So wonderful for me to see all the great things that God has called you to.
Wow. Oh, that is so awesome to hear. You know, one of the questions, when I was doing my residency, one of the first things that I heard you sharing was something that was called the interpretive definition of servant leadership. And, you know, sometimes we like to boil definitions down to one sentence, two boiler words, what it is. But it was a paragraph. And in every one of those phrases, it spawned into a whole new thought process. And the question I have for you is, what fuels your passion for servant leadership? Tell everyone what got you turned on to it in the beginning.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Fenton, that's like such a huge question. All of us have really untraditional ways of finding our space and place, right? Some of the things I experienced in childhood were very dramatic. And just to have people who took time to see me and know me and serve me. And I was not easy to serve, in my childhood, but that I think really began to be something that, just opened my eyes to the power of serving and loving other people. When I came to Regent University in the 90s, a class that I was in began to talk about this concept, servant leadership. And I'm sitting in the class going, wow, there's a name for it. I knew it philosophically and I knew it in my heart. But I had no idea that there was an entire body of research devoted to understanding servant leadership. So I think that's really where my journey began, as far as, utilizing and understanding and wanting to research servant leadership.
Wow. So it's something that you practically experienced. And then when you went to school, you began to see it all being organized into a body of thought. So often, when I was doing one of my graduate studies, there were pretty much contrasting all of these different leadership theories. And sometimes it's almost like, what's the leadership theory of the month? Which one is it? And I usually hear, in my circles, I hear servant leadership and transformational leadership. And I saw, now to everyone, Dr. Patterson has written over 75 publications. I wanted to read off to you. Usually you'll tell people the books they've written. She's responsible for more than 75 when you go to the website. But one of your publications, it pretty much contrasted or brought some enlightenment to the differences between servant leadership and transformational leadership. Can you just share your thoughts on that? What do you see as some of the differences, how they alike, how they different?
Yeah, and it's funny because that's a question that keeps being asked. Like, well, are they the same? Are they
Yeah,
different? And researchers begin to ask those same questions.
yeah,
So I'm going to take you back just a little further
sure.
to something called transactional leadership.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's say that I'm your boss and you're my follower. It would be about the transaction. I need you to do this, and I'm going to pay you or reward you in this way. You don't do it, there's a punishment in this way. It's just a transaction.
right.
That is the lowest form of leading anyone can engage in.
Wow.
It's just about getting things done, it's using people.
Yeah,
And we've all probably worked for leaders like that. So, but let's take it up just a little bit, experience some more, and let's go into transformational leadership. That is where, as if I'm your leader and you're my follower, you and I are focused on the goals of the organization. That is our primary focus. Primary. So I may have a secondary focus and be concerned about you as a person or concerned about different things going on. But my primary focus is the organizational objectives. That is where everything is going to begin and end for a transformational leader. So let me be clear to say that transactional leadership and transformational leadership definitely have a place in a space. But let's up the ante just a little bit more and go to really just a defining way to lead people and engage people is servant leadership. My primary focus is going to be you as the follower. How can I serve you? How can I help you? How can I put you in places and spaces where you're going to grow, where you're going to develop, where you're really going to make a difference in the world?
yeah,
That doesn't mean I'm ignoring the organization. That's a common misconception. But you as a follower are my primary focus. The secondary things are the organizational objectives and what's going on, maybe community wise and all those things. So it's not that I'm ignoring the organization, but I am empowering you, I'm helping you, I'm serving you. And guess what happens? Followers are so well equipped and develop and grow that they're doing fabulous things in the organization and just as people. So we have different levels of leading, and definitely servant leadership is just something that creates a space for followers to do well, leaders to do well, and organizations to succeed.
wow. That is an excellent answer. You just triggered two more questions for me, but I'm going to come back to them in just a second. When you look, now you've researched servant leadership. Regent University is at the pinnacle, I believe, at leadership thought, and theory, and research. That's beyond anecdotal scholarship. Really sound scholarship. It works. I've used it, and it's worked profoundly well in my church. And when you listen or even peer across the industry, and you hear different people saying, this is servant leadership, or this is servant leadership, are there any misnomers that you want to clarify where you've heard some things said or described servant leadership where you said, no, that's not true?
Oh, yes, a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a misconception, Dr. Fenton, that I am Christian, therefore I am servant.
Ah,
It's not true. I'm sure all of us know Christians who are far from servant.
yeah,
And, this
yeah,
is
yeah,
unfortunate,
yeah,
but it's true. I also know people who aren't walking in faith and aren't walking, in communion with the Lord. And they really exhibit servant leadership behaviors and they're doing wonderful things.
yeah.
So I think it's about who we are as a person and the decision we make as individuals, as leaders, how we're going to walk out this servant leadership philosophy. I can choose to serve people or I can choose not to serve people. It is my choice.
Yeah.
And a lot of this goes back to Robert K. Greenleaf, who's known as the father of servant leadership.
Yeah.
And he says, you make the choice to serve and then you lead.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. If you had to coach someone today who's saying, I'm getting ready to start a business, I'm getting ready to just think of someone who's just gotten promoted into a leadership position. And they said, what's some of the first things that I should do and work on in myself so that I can be a practitioner of servant leadership? Do you have any practical ideas or suggestions for them?
Yes. And it actually isn't even my idea or even the literature's idea. This is straight from the Bible. It's love God and love others.
Wow.
And I think when we have an abiding space
Yeah.
and that relationship with God, and I am making that really the foundational component of how I lead people. If I am praying for you as my follower, it changes the game. It
Yeah.
changes the relationship. I'm not only investing in you, I'm asking the Father of the universe, the creator of all things, the creator of you, the creator of me,
Yeah.
to come into that relationship. And together we're walking that out.
Yeah.
I've created something that's just higher,
Yeah.
where I'm going to have to really be all in for you as a follower. So love God and love others. So, and in my opinion and in my research, and again, this is biblical, that love component is really the difference maker.
Wow.
If you've ever had a leader that has loved you, you know it is life changing.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
followers of Christ, we want to leave people better than when they came to us. We want them to leave us just so much better, happier, freer, more autonomous, as Greenleaf would say. But I want to be the type of person that, because of our interactions together, that you're a better human being.
Wow. That is amazing. I have an off-topic question for you, because I think that when I interact with leaders, and even this is a challenge that I know I face, something that I've had to personally overcome. And sometimes you think, if I serve the people that are following me and I pour myself out, I remember when I did that before and I got burned. Or, how much is too far? At what point, what boundaries should I set? Should there be boundaries? To anyone who may be fearful or nervous about being exploited, out of a sincere heart.
Yeah, like being taken advantage of, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bob Lydon, who's a fantastic servant leadership researcher, one time I was having a conversation with him, and he was saying, it's just rainbows and lollipops. So, but that's not really the way it is. And we do have to have some boundaries. We have to be wise. We have to be emotionally intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
To create things, because we want to have sustainability. So for that person, for our leadership, the organization, all of it. So creating those safety boundaries well, they're not even safety, but just those boundaries where we know the place and space that our followers need to be.
Yeah.
So we want to have grace upon grace upon grace, but we also don't want to move into enabling people into bad behaviors, or even something called abused grace, where they're just using it because they know that we're going to serve them or love them or help them.
Yeah.
So Ron Scheich, who was the founder of Panera, when he retired, he wrote an article. This was several years ago. He wrote an article for entrepreneur.com, I believe it was. And he said, he realized his job wasn't just to help people at all costs, but to serve them.
Wow.
And sometimes serving other people is having those hard conversations.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not easy, right? One of my favorite verses is, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but
That's
the
right.
kisses of an enemy are deceitful. I don't know about you, Dr. Fenton. I need these faithful people who are willing to wound me with kindness and graciousness, but willing to tell me the truth. And servant leaders love you so much that they're going to have those hard conversations.
Wow.
They're going to be honest. And if there needs to be a separation from you and the organization, they're willing to walk you through that. Now, it is the way they do it.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it in ugliness or in manipulation or anything like that. They're going to do it honorably and for your good.
And I think that is really, what I'm hearing you say over and over, and I'm bearing witness with it. It's what your motivation is. If it's for their good, if it's not to wound, not to damage, not to be punitive, but to bring out your best. It's almost just like if you're a parent with children, and we'd spend a lot of our time serving them, but we don't just tell them the good things. We tell them other things that they have to do, that they have to get it together. And we do that out of a sense of love. And when you look at leadership and followership, it's saying what's going to bring out their best. And that is telling them some of the areas where there are shortcomings, and seeing that is also a part of me being a servant leader, to bring out their best. So thank you for clarifying that. I think that for me helps me. One question that I had for you is, when you look at servant leadership, what are some of the new frontiers that are being studied in the laboratories right now?
Yeah, well, I have a laboratory in my own mind. So it's just always so full of ideas and ways that, servant leadership can be researched and what's coming down the road. So I do believe that one of the bigger components that I find incredibly interesting right now,
Yeah.
and this again, not my idea.
Yeah.
So much of this comes from scripture and Robert K. Greenleaf, Larry Spears, who's just a phenomenal servant leadership person, took all of Robert K. Greenleaf's writings and took these top 10 things out of his writings. But one of them was healing.
Mm.
I think we're living in an age where so many people come into our workplaces, our churches, our ministries, our not for profits, and they're damaged.
Yeah.
So I think this concept of healing from a servant leadership perspective is incredibly important. How are we as leaders caring for our followers in ways that bring some healing to them? So, can we cure everything, mend everything? No. Think about this, Dr. Fenton. If people come into a workplace and they work for a leader who believes in them, sees them, helps them, loves them, serves them, that's something that so many people have never experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
And in some ways, we really do have that power to build a better part of a human being.
Absolutely. That is a tremendous way to look at it. And you are so right, because what we're seeing that's rampant right now is the amount of people, really in the last, I guess, 10 years or so, they're switching jobs so frequently that the term that a person is employed for, it's almost everyone's contractual, 2 years, 3 years. If you have a 20-year-old son, I have 20-year-old sons, I'm seeing it. Oh, I've been there 2 years. 2 years is nothing. I remember growing up, you wanted to work in a place for 20 years, 30 years and retire there. And so people now, they're switching around and they come into certain institutions with, scarred from their last experience. They come in disappointed, disillusioned, not trusting anyone, waiting for the day where you as a leader you're out to get them, so they need to take the first shot, so to speak, or their first strike. And you're absolutely right that when you look at servant leadership or being an effective leader, it's how to address some of those concerns early on to let them know this is a different place than your last place, and to begin to adopt some of those skill sets that where you can be a healer, to bring out their best and say, this is a different experience than you may have had. So I think that's a tremendous point. When you look at some of the work that you're doing, if a person's saying, I want to hear more about Dr. Kathleen Patterson, what she's doing, where she is, where should they go? What is there a site or a book that you're writing? Tell us what you're doing next.
Oh my goodness, I am so obsessed right now with the concept of aging. I'm a grandmother and I've got, I'm looking at maybe the last 10 to 15 years before I retire at maybe 80 or whatever. This aging process is actually beautiful. And Greenleaf actually wrote an essay that a lot of people don't even read. It's just not a popular one, but it's my favorite. It's called Old Age, the Ultimate Test of Spirit. So I think, as I'm aging and I'm hearing so many people have conversations about legacy and purpose and calling, I want people to have some investment into how they plan to finish their career, how they plan to age, so whether you're 20, 30, 40, whatever.
Yeah.
One of the weird things I really like to do is to look at famous people's last words. And, and I'll just give a couple of examples. Everybody knows Tupac. And I think it's incredibly sad that his last word, and I don't curse, but his last words were F you.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, the king of pop. We all grew up, well, not I grew up listening to Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So, but his last words were more milk. He was asking for a drug. And it's just so sad that these people that are so adulated and celebrated. But I think what this really shows us is, there's the kingdom of this world, and then there's God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And as we age and as we transition to our heavenly rewards, I want there to be something so valuable that we've left with people. We can leave wealth that's going to be spent and squandered, whatever it is. But the things that we leave inside of other people, those are the difference making things.
Yes,
so that grows inside of them. They can share and pass that along, impacting another person and another, kind of like the butterfly effect. It just is exponential. So aging is a fascination of mine right now. So I'm definitely working on that. I'm also very centrally focused on not just servant leadership, but servant followership.
Hey.
So
Yeah.
I know, I love it.
Yeah.
So most of us have, people that we're leading and people that we're following. Even if we're the head of the organization, we're answering to a board, answering to the community, some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to be serving as our posture, as our lifestyle. So in our leadership, but also in our followership.
That is the one of the joys that I've had in when I attended Regent University is just the amount of study around the topic of followership, because we've discussed leadership, at an intense level for the last, 50, 60 years. But now we're seeing so much thought and so much effort going into defining the roles and the importance of good followership, that it's just not one person. Everyone has to bring something to the table. When you even say servant followership, that causes a shift in a person's mind. It just like, how am I following? Am I following in a way that's also consistent with the principles of being a servant and seeing that we all, what excites you about servant followership?
Well, let me tell you. So of all the words, servant, it's not exactly the thing that we're going to sign up for. We'd much rather, be king or top dog or whatever you want to call it. So, but follower is kind of the same. If we're in a room of third graders or people, in any career stage, would you rather be the leader or the follower? So, it's kind of interesting that servant and follower are kind of, maybe the not looked at things. So I was reading in 1 Corinthians 1 yesterday, and it was talking that, the wise and the noble things, but God chooses things that aren't. Paul goes on to tell us that he does that so that we don't boast in ourselves, so that we boast in who the Lord is. So I think there's something beautiful when we choose to be a servant, when we choose to embrace our roles as follower.
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's this pursuit of grand things, but guess what? Servant is very grand.
That's right.
And these are beautiful, beautiful places and spaces that we need to be comfortable in.
That's exactly right. It's so amazing because you said something earlier on where when someone takes a genuine interest in you and they love you and they care about you, you can sense it instantaneously. And that is the truth, whether you're a leader or a follower. Once someone says, I'm going to serve you, I'm going to bring out your best. This isn't just about me. It's not about my interests, my goals, but what can I do to make this world better, to make you better? It doesn't matter where you are in that relationship. You release something in that other party. And I think that those principles work, and it's sorely needed. I want to thank you so much, just for being with us on Faith to Lead. Everyone, you have to check Dr. Kathleen Patterson out at Regent University and the publications and the work she's doing on aging gracefully and servant leadership and servant followership. If you want to study, then Regent University is a great university and their strategic leadership program. And she's also done a lot of writing just about marriage and family and so many different topics. I want to thank you today just for joining Faith to Lead, sharing us with your thoughts. We're pulling for you, and we look forward to staying connected to you each step of the way. So thank you so much.
Definitely my privilege. And if people want to change the world, serve the world.
That's exactly right. So you heard it right there from Dr. Kathleen Patterson. Let's go ahead and change this world. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to subscribe to this podcast, share this message, let someone know what you heard today, but most of all, put it to practice, because this is how you can win. Thanks so much.